Rob Parsons. Rob, first of all, talk us through the reasoning behind these legal challenges. Why is Donald Trump doing this? What's he hoping to achieve?
Well, with Donald Trump, you can never be absolutely sure, of course, but the fact of the matter is that whilst he was in euphoric mood after the results came through in Florida, there wasn't too much talk about legal action then. But as things began to change, particularly in those so-called blue wall states in the north for the Democrats, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, then his mood began to change. For Donald Trump, the very idea that he could lose this election, I think, makes him think that there must have been fraud. So effectively what he's doing is he's calling for the vote to be, the count rather, to be stopped in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia in the south, and for a recount in Wisconsin. And he wants to take this all to the Supreme Court. On what legal basis? Nobody is really certain at the moment. We've not heard from anybody in the Donald Trump camp what the legal basis would be. And furthermore, if legal action were to be taken, the procedure would be first to go through the state courts rather than directly to the Supreme Court. They would have a judgment on the matter. And it's highly unlikely that even if they judge negatively, for instance, on the count in one of the states, that it would have a very big impact on the outcome. So why do it at all? It's puzzling in a way, but voter fraud has been a theme for Donald Trump, not just in the last few days, but over the last few months. It's as if, as I was suggesting earlier on, he cannot contemplate the idea of losing. And that by definition, therefore, if he does appear to be losing, there's got to be some sort of fraud involved. The problem, of course, though, is whether or not he achieves any sort of outcome in the courts, if indeed he goes that far, is the integrity of the election is brought into question with the American people, in particular with those who've supported him.
I think there is a very real question, Rob, from many people, not just Trump supporters, but also perhaps our international viewers. And that is, why are there these long delays with the vote counting? The election was Tuesday. Here we are Thursday. Some projections aren't going to come out until even this weekend. Why the delays?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question. But there are some obvious reasons. First of all, mail-in votes take much longer to count and to control than the ordinary voting, in person takes on an on-the-day vote. Secondly, the number of mail-in votes this time has been colossally greater than in the past. In some states, mail-in voting this time around has surpassed the number of votes in the 2016 election. So that is one good reason why. I think the second reason, though, is it's worth noting where these delays are happening, most of all. And they're happening primarily in those blue wall states that we were talking about earlier on, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Why are they happening there? Because it was anticipated that Joe Biden might do well in those particular states, and that most of his votes would come from mail-in voting because it's favored by the Democrats. So why wasn't there an anticipation and preparation put into place? Well, one of the reasons why it didn't happen is because, in at least a couple of those states, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, the Republican legislatures prevented changes to the legislation in those states to allow early voting to be counted earlier. And in another one, Michigan, they did allow it to be counted somewhat earlier, but only by 1 day. This despite the efforts of election officials, both Republican and Democrats, it has to be said, to persuade the legislatures to change the situation so that counting could start earlier. It didn't happen, and one has to wonder why. Early counting happens elsewhere. It happened in Florida, for instance, and it happened in Ohio and in Arizona.
Rob, thanks for that. France 24's Chief Foreign Editor, Rob Parsons.